Welcome back, everyday Americans. You've rejoined the Constitution study, and as promised, I have with me at the moment Colton McAbee. You may have heard his name, you may not have heard his name. I'll be honest, I didn't hear about his name until I saw a report of another Tennessee boy who got released from the January 6th gulag. So, Colton, thank you for taking some time and joining us here at the Constitution study.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Now, I'm sure there's a message you want to get out. People want to know what's going on, and let's face it, what most people are probably interested in is your story. What were you doing at January 6th? That's an important part of the story, I believe. And then what happened? Well, let's start with that. What were you doing at the Capitol on January 6th?
Yeah, good question. I went to DC just to hear Trump speak. I got in a wreck on December 27th, 2020, which gave me the time off from work. And the guy and I went up there and to watch Trump's talk. And lo and behold, we ended up at the Capitol. We were told, march over there, make our voices peacefully and patriotically heard, and that's what we did.
Now, when you were there, as I understand it, what was your interaction? What were you actually doing? I mean, I did a little research on your wife's website, and I mean, you weren't there throwing bottles and causing a ruckus, were you?
No. So initially when we got there, we were just doing what everybody else was doing, waving flags, singing, chanting. It wasn't until after we were attacked by officers that chaos ensued. In fact, I got the heck out of there and then, made a stupid decision to go back to the Capitol. That's when everybody was climbing on top of it, and I found my way at the tunnel. And right then and there, that's just when I looked over to the crowd. I'm like, what the heck am I even doing up here? And that's when I saw an officer go down. Now, me being a former deputy sheriff, active on that day, employed, I should say, I went to go help. And the I put myself in between the crowd and the officers, and I just kind of put myself in a volatile situation to make sure that an officer didn't get dragged into the crowd, and that's what I did. I reached for him. I tried to pick him up. Um, I got hit in the head with a baton by another officer. I tried to get Roseanne Boylan. She was lying there lifeless in the corner, being beaten by Lila Morris. And for all that, I got hit in the head. And then I popped up and started yelling at this officer, "You can't hit me in the head. That's deadly force." And another officer comes by or out of the police line and cross-checks me with his baton and tries to push me down the stairs. And now I'm trained to distance myself from a threat. So what I did was I gave him two little pushes, directed my attention back at the officer that I was trying to help up, and then we got dragged down the stairs where I protected him from the crowd because they were trying to go for his gun and they're trying to beat him. And I shielded him with my body. We both got up. I pushed him back to the police line, and that's when I looked over to my left and I couldn't find Roseanne, but I saw somebody doing CPR on a lady. So I went over there and I offered my services. It turned out it was Roseanne, and we couldn't get a pulse. And so we picked her back up and put her inside of the tunnel where the officers told us to bring her. And we actually got sprayed and hit for that. And the guy that was doing chest compressions, he actually was getting tired of saying, "I need compression." So I finally took over. I got about 3 or 4 pumps in and got ripped off by another protester, and they dragged her inside. And then after, I don't know, maybe 2 minutes of just sitting there or standing there in shock and awe and being thanked for my service by another officer, I got out of there.
So interesting. So you were first attacked by the police, and your response wasn't to escalate, but to depart. Then you go back and you're lending assistance to a fallen officer. To you, again, you were an active deputy sheriff, actively employed. You're giving aid and comfort to a fellow officer, and for that you were attacked and assaulted with a deadly weapon by other officers. It sounds like there was a lot of miscommunication in and amongst not just the crowd, but the officers as well.
Yeah, I mean, to me, there was no de-escalation techniques on the officers themselves. I pulled a lady from the crowd. Me and a guy with red face paint, we pulled her from the crowd. She was being trampled on. And the prosecution tried to use that against me, saying that I didn't do that because they only played a portion of the video. And then they charged me with assault with a deadly dangerous weapon because I tried to help the officer up with while I had gloves on, and those are my weapons. And then I had another assault without weapons when I pushed an officer away from me, because he tried to push me down the stairs. So what they did to me was just kind of just ridiculous. They trumped up charges here, they played them down over here, and then they sit there and said what I did that day wasn't, what I actually did. And I was actually there. I was helping people. Cop, civilian, doesn't matter. I was actually helping somebody. And they said I went there with malice in my heart. And there's no malice in my heart. I help people. That's what I swore an oath to do is help my community, protect and serve. And that's exactly what I did that day. I helped.
And you went there with malice. When did the police become mind readers? How could they know what was in your heart? Because what you describe is someone who you're at an event, you saw things going crazy, and rather than simply taking care of yourself, you went back in, and that's when you saw people who needed help, and you helped. And you were charged with assault. I love it. So you were charged with assault for giving CPR to somebody, and you were charged with assault for pushing back against an assault made on your person. In other words, for resisting what's effectively a false arrest, all right, an attempt to detain you illegally, which the Supreme Court has said you're perfectly within your rights to. And again, you're back to the it's how they spun the information. How we're going to show you this part of the video and not that. And of course, that's the prosecution's job, right? Their job should be to find the truth, but in effect, the prosecution's job is to get a conviction, no matter what tricks they need to do to use it. At least that's what it sounds like from a civilian out here in the world.
Yeah,
So,
and when I went for my bond hearing, I went in front of a Nashville judge. He actually granted me bond, saying I was well in my right for self-defense, and it wasn't even an assault. He actually granted me bond. The prosecution, in turn, filed an appeal that same day. I got denied, saying I was a threat to my own community that I serve. And during the bond hearing, they cropped the video, they left Roseanne out, and they removed the audio. And so, if you add all that together, you can see that I'm actually trying to help people. Now, mind you, I did say some choice words. I had my favorite word of the day was the F word, and I am embarrassed about it, but it happened. I can't change that.
but that's also considered constitutionally protected speech. And you are in Washington D.C., which means there's no question about they're dealing with laws created by Congress. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. So you were charged. You were found guilty by a jury of, well, you want to say a jury of your peers, but it doesn't sound like that's exactly what happened.
No, in fact, while we were picking the jury, they came out and said that I should be buried underneath the jail. One came out said that she hopes that if she gets picked, that she can pick my punishment, which would be, equivalent to death. And then we had several people who said they were victims of that day, and saying that, that January 6th was such an atrocity that they can't even bring their kids back to the green space or whatever, the little park in front of the Capitol. I mean, it's ridiculous. We had people sit there, and the judge would ask them, "Do you think you can put your biasness away from Mr. McAbee?" And they said, "No, I don't think so." He would then ask, "Could you try?" And they would say, "Well, maybe." And that was good enough for him. I mean, these aren't my peers.
So you are entitled. You have a right to an impartial jury, and you're telling me that the judge denied you an impartial jury when the jurors specifically said they could not set aside their biases, and he weaseled his way into doing that. Tell me there's some legal action around that.
I am looking at that. In fact, it's not even just the jury situation. We declared a mistrial because the prosecution sent back tainted evidence to the jury. They saw it, asked the question, and the judge asked if they could sit there and forget what they saw, and it was a couple text messages that were sent. And they said, well, we might be able to forget. I can't, I don't know. And the judge said, okay, well, we're not declaring a mistrial. So yeah, we are looking into that.
Now, this is a federal judge, correct? Have you reached out to your House member and asked about articles of impeachment?
And my house members aren't really answering the phone anymore. I think my wife has kind of ruined them on that. My wife is a firecracker and held them accountable. So they're not, every time they hear the word McAbee, they run because we are holding their feet to the fire. But yeah, they even throughout all this, they refuse to even acknowledge my existence. So yeah, it takes a guy from Texas to actually help me, Troy Nels, than my own people here.
Yeah, and that's kind of the important. The point is you have a judge that obviously is behaving badly, which under the Constitution, Article 3, that they only hold their job during good behavior. This is not good behavior, and there's an understanding of absolute immunity for a judge in civil service. Boy, I'd love to see some people file criminal charges against these actors. So you have an unfair trial. You're denied your right to an impartial jury, and you're found guilty. Surprise, surprise. What happened then?
Yeah, well, during the entire trial, I looked at my attorney. I said, Ben, look, man, I'm guilty on all charges. They're gonna find me guilty. He said, no, be positive. I said, Ben, I'm positive they're gonna find me guilty on all charges. Look at me. I'm a J6er. They're all Democrats. Vote who Biden. They're not my people. And so after the conviction, they put me in a holding cell, and I sat there and I just thought for like it seemed like hours. Like this really happened to me. Like this could happen to anybody, and it happened to me. And they brought me back to the jail at the DC Gulag. And when I got back, of course, word travels fast inside the Patriot unit. Um, Everybody lined up and clapped and hugged and said it's gonna be all right. And then and that was I think September, October-ish. And then on February 29th of 2024, I got sentenced.
And what were you sentenced to?
That was 70 months, so almost 6 years, 2 months shy. And then like less than a week after I got sentenced, I got shipped out. I went to Philadelphia for a month and a half, to Oklahoma, back to Missouri, and then up to they put me in Minnesota. That was my final destination. I've never been to Minnesota.
Well, now you have,
Yeah.
but all for the crime of helping somebody and defending yourself against an illegal assault. That sounds like it's why I say in this country we don't so much have a justice system as just a system. It's a system where the biases exist, and it takes people of fortitude to be willing to stand up and say, I regret I have but one life to give to my country. Just to stand up and say we're going to defend our rights because it's not just our rights, it's the rights of our family and our children and all that. So you bounced around, and finally Donald Trump is elected, and one of the first things he does is start pardoning J6ers. What was that? What was that like when first of all, what was it like when you realized he had won the election, and then what was it like when you found out? Yeah, here it is. He actually did it. He actually pardoned me.
Yeah, so during the election, I was actually watching TV at one of the TV units at the prison. And, everybody's like, oh, they're not going to call it, tonight. It's going to be super close. I said, no, they're calling tonight. I have a feeling they're calling tonight. Now, 9 o'clock is lockdown, so I'm back in my room. The election's still going on. I have my radio. I'm sitting here trying to get a signal up over my head in my own room, trying to hear the election results come in. And I think it was like 2 or 3 a.m. They actually declared that Donald Trump was a president. And I went out and I just screamed. I ran down the hallway because our doors didn't lock because we didn't have a bathroom in it. So I could run down the hallway to the bathroom and back. And it was kind of like a college dorm style. And I met like 4 or 5 other guys. They're all ecstatic, and we are all just like, "Yeah, Trump won." And so the months between the the election and the inauguration were the longest months of my life. I mean, and I kind of kept it where I didn't want to think I was getting pardoned because I didn't want to be disappointed if I didn't. So I was just going to do my entire time. But when that pardon came down and I figured out I was one of them, I jumped up, I packed my stuff, and I got the heck out of there.
And I'm sure that meeting with your wife was an especially emotional and joyful one, and one hopefully a memory you take through the rest of your life. Colton, again, now you did mention this briefly, but you do have You're looking at some lawsuits at some a redress of the grievances that you have with the Justice Department, with the judicial system. I know you're in the. You can't talk a lot about it. Tell us a little bit about what you've got, just so that people can know what's going on, and then tell them where they can follow you and find out more, and probably contribute to the costs of this litigation, because I know it's not cheap.
Yeah, so I have an active lawsuit right now with the DC jail and a lieutenant after being sprayed with pepper spray for not wearing a COVID mask during medication, and so that's ongoing. The DC jail is refusing to give up video evidence, so we are pursuing that. Um, I just signed on to another lawsuit this morning. Can't really talk too much about it right now. The details are still out there. Um, and there's, more trickling in. You can follow me in my story at sarahmacabee.us. That's Sarah with an H, Maccabee, MCABEE.us. That's where you can find my entire journey from being arrested to being free and everything in between.
Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, you're free at last. Colton, I want to thank you. It took a lot to step into the breach when people needed help, and you did it. And it took a lot to go through what you went through, and you did, and you seem to have done it with honor, with a little bit of style. And the Constitution says here to help if there's any way we can. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but I spend all my time studying the Constitution of the United States, and I've already heard several violations that I think we need to pursue. I will put your link on the show page when it hits, but you're welcome to contact me with any help, or if you want to, come back and explain the lawsuits as they progress. So again, I want people to see not just the bad stuff that happens, but that, yeah, you can stand up, you can demand a redress, and it seems like you're on the path to doing that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We are.
All right. Well, again, thank you for your time. All the all blessings on your lawsuits, and again, please keep in touch. I am very curious. I don't know where in Tennessee you are. I'm in Middle Tennessee. I'm actually down in Bedford County. So maybe one day we can get together for a cup of coffee or something.
Well, you're just right up down the road. I used to live there, and now I'm up here near Nashville.
Excellent, excellent. So we'll have to get together for a cup of coffee or something.
Yes, sir.
All right. Have a great day.